Hello, and welcome to episode 34 of Trails in the Pod. I'm Colin. That's Kevin.
No catchy intro segue today. We got higher elements to tackle.
Kevin, that was not one of your best.
Colin, I know that. And that's why I said no catchy segment today. Today, we're doing Chapter 1 of Trails in the Sky, the third. And we had, again, the great time of playing through this chapter in 2 sessions with all of you.
So this, as Kevin alluded to, this chapter took 2 separate streams, about 2 hours each. One went a little bit over, one went a little bit under. I don't remember how much longer like chapters 2, 3, and 4 are. So right now, we've been streaming once a week. I might have to stream twice a week or stream twice one week once the next week. On my Twitch page, under Colin Behrens, there is a schedule that I will be updating every week that you can say, okay, here's what he's doing.
Come in with all the suddenness of a new party member transforming from a rock.
You know what, let's talk about the game now, since you bring that up. There's a couple of new elements, to this game. And let's start with the hub area, this Hermit's Garden. We saw a little bit of it at the end of the prologue, but now in Chapter 1 we get to explore it. And there's like a couple of discrete areas that serve gameplay functions, right? We have this little rest area that helps us restore our health, give us some CP. We have a tree that sells us ingredients. We have a magical stone that does a lot of things, but includes selling us equipment. It includes synthesizing quartz for us. It includes converting those quartz or sepith into cash money. And also, when we get to it, it turns magical rocks into people. So, Kevin, how do you feel about the Hermit's Garden?
So this is different. It looks like this will be with us to stay throughout the game. Not like the other 2 games where you have a city with all your needs, and you're there for one chapter, then you go off to the different city, to a new area. It looks like here, this home base will be with us, like I said, through the end.
Yeah, and this is reinforced by the fact that you can warp to it at any time.
We have a fast travel of a sort that we did not have in the previous games. This does not feel like a Trails game if your standard is FC and SC. It feels like a D&D type dungeon crawler.
Yeah, absolutely. Gameplay, I would say, is still the same as a normal Trails game, maybe a bit more fine. We're fine when we're talking dungeon exploration, combat, party management. But when it comes to how we experience the narrative, it's structured a lot differently. And I'm curious to know, I mean, we've only played a little bit, so we're going to be playing far more, but what's your preference?
I like this because it's it's a change of pace. I think that there's something new to explore. The more familiar settings of, the talking trees, the talking stones, lots of talking inanimate objects. We have a lot more quotient of that here. In general, I like it's a bit more, I don't want to say pared down to the bones, but it's more direct.
Something that I really like, I'm just thinking about this now, because I'm thinking about this game in relation to the rest of the series, is that this game introduces the concept of having a standard location. A place that you always come back to. You might go off someplace else and do some exploring, but you always come back. The more I think about it, I think every Trails game has this feature to some extent. It's done in different ways, but every Trails game has a home base that you always come back to, right? This is true in Cold Steel. It's true in the Crossbell arc. I mean, it's in the name. It's true in Hajimari to some extent with the Reverie Corridor. It's true in Kuro no Kiseki. The only one in which you are constantly running around is the original duology of FC and SC. And I kind of like the idea of having a hub area because it allows things to develop over time. You can talk to the same people and see how they react to events throughout the entirety of the game.
I like it for the reasons that you said, but with the introduction, it feels natural. It fits the theme, the purpose of we're trapped in this alternate dimension, and it feels like, of course, that's a natural consequence of how and why we are here.
Let's speak about nature for a second, and how something can feel both natural and unnatural. By this I mean, in a JRPG, it is natural to earn money and use that to buy equipment, and rest up and power yourself up and all of that. Because normally you exist in a real world, or at least in the normal world, where people need money in order to buy food and pay their rent. Therefore, they charge you for their services. This game literally says, what currency do you use? We use Mira. Okay, now you can use Mira in order to buy things from this stone slab in the middle of the hermit's garden. No real rationale given for why we need to pay them money. From a gameplay perspective, it's pretty simple to see why. But narrative-wise, can you think of a good reason?
I cannot think of a good reason why a magical talking tree wants my cold hard cash. No.
I can't think of a good reason either.
And for the first two games, the free market economics, for lack of a better term, it makes sense. There's not an apocalyptic, world-ending threat such of the degree where you would expect the market people, the weapon sellers, what say you, to give away their best shit because they would like to continue existing in a safe reality. It's, stop a coup, whatever. They want the queen to go on, but even if she falls, they have to pay rent and so forth.
Right.
So it felt natural in the first two games. Here, it's very clear to us, Colin, that the talking inanimate objects, I'm being facetious, they seem to be extensions of a higher power who is supporting us. They want us to win. They want us to clear the dungeons, whatever, in a good amount of time. They are invested in our success. But
do we know that? I mean this sincerely, because clearly they are setting up these areas for us to rest, get equipped, new items are added as the plot progresses. At the same time, while they're the ones allowing us to continue on this journey, there's also roadblocks that are there. And I think that we can state pretty clearly that the dungeons that we explore and the Hermit Garden, they're not separate, right? They seem to be part of the same reality, and they interact with each other. And so I don't know if it's quite so cut and dry that the whoever is in charge of this area wants us to succeed. We don't even know succeed at what.
Okay, my impression was that the higher intelligence that is providing all this stuff for us is set in opposition to Phantasma.
I mean, it could be, but what do you think? So, okay, I'm going to bring this up. It's at the end of the chapter. This mysterious dude who we saw right at the end of the prologue calls himself the servant of the master of Phantasma. So what do you think Phantasma refers to?
I don't have much of a hard idea. And chapter 1 is just called Phantasma. That's it. So maybe that is the realm or the dimension or the space we are in. Like Phantasma, because two things come to mind. A phantasm, like something ethereal, like a ghost, something not entirely of the material plane, and fantastic, maybe in the original sense, in that it's not bound by the mundane.
Sure. I know what it means. Do you want me to confirm your suspicions or not?
Never.
Okay, I will neither confirm nor deny. Something else that I want to bring up, though, as a contrast, is precisely how one earns money. Because in SC and FC, the way that you primarily earned money was by completing bracer missions, right? You were basically paid for your job, and then you would use that in order to buy equipment and items to help you do your job. There are no side quests, at least that we've seen, and I honestly don't remember if something akin to them is added. I don't think so, though. It's just the dungeon crawling, which means that
BP.
And right, there's no BP. There's no BP. Which this means is that the only way to get money is to sell your equipment or to turn your Sepith into Mira. And I find this interesting because it's a mechanic that's always been there. But at least the way that I played, I always felt discouraged from doing it because I could always just earn money through another means. And throwing away my Sepith felt like maybe then I can't craft quartz. Now, I didn't really get into the quartz system in a way that maybe you did, and in a way that I'm hoping to with this because I'm playing at a harder difficulty, which we should talk about the final boss at some point as well for this chapter. But I think it's interesting that this chapter, or that this game, is kind of pushing us to take advantage of that mechanic in a way that I had never really taken advantage of it before in the previous 2 games.
We also get Mira, I believe, from the Sun, Moon, Star Doors.
I don't remember that. Doesn't mean that you were wrong, but I don't remember that. Do you have evidence?
I do not. It's pure speculation.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for it as we play. Because that would kind of make sense, right? In that these are semi-optional things that you can run into that then reward you for having done them.
Yes, we do. We get the long barrel attachment for Tita.
Yes.
And 3,000 Mira.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. So there is some alternative means of getting cash money.
But also, that's not that much.
No, it's not. Of course, that's one door, and there's other doors. But, no, it's not much.
Tita? What's that doing here? Because we only had Kevin and Reese.
That's true. So, in this chapter, there are 2 discrete moments in which we find floating stones that we are then told to hold up in front of the big stone in the Hermit's Garden, and then that stone turns into a character. We're being facetious about how we describe it. Clearly, Tita and Julia are trapped in these objects, and we are releasing them. They don't know how they got here, just like we don't really know how we got there. But now they are in the Hermit's Garden with us.
So this fills story and gameplay roles. Gameplay. Kevin and Reese, 2 people. That's not enough for a functional party, which at the minimum
Correct.
was 4 people. And oftentimes in SE, more to swap in and out depending on your inclination and the situation. So we need some way of getting more people.
Yeah.
And story-wise, they're trapped. They cannot come and go freely. So there's a more emotional investment, a sense of haste. We have to be quick. There seems to be no food supplies, though that's more as a, diegetic, don't tarry too long. No one's going to starve, obviously.
I mean, there is a food supply in the Hermit's Garden. The tree sells you vegetables.
Okay, yes, so that's good to know. But they're trapped with us. They allow us to fill out the growing party roles. So we get Tita. She's familiar to us.
Yes.
She's long range. She's a fragile glass cannon. Don't get hurt in the melee. She'll die. But then we have someone who is basically a new party member. Not quite, but almost.
Right, not completely new, but like she's used a couple of times in SC. She's not a core party member. And now, she is. She's there from the beginning, basically. And I think that this kind of opens up, like what I find really interesting about this in terms of setting the expectations of the player. It's not like we're going back and building the old gang again, right? We didn't get Tita and Shera or Joshua and Estelle. We have established the expectation that we will find new characters as we explore, but we have no idea who they are.
So question, Colin, for you then. Kevin is new, Grace is new, Julia is almost new.
Kevin is not new.
Do you think... Sorry. Kevin as a protagonist, as the lead role, is new.
Yeah.
Was it a mistake, do you think, to have Tita, who was with us for 2 games? Is that not enough of a... Is she a bridge to the new? Would it have been better for a more clean break, since you have Kevin from game 2?
I mean, I think it depends on what this game is trying to accomplish. And I don't think that this game is trying to accomplish a completely new experience. I see this game as more Well, I won't talk about what I think the game is doing because we're so early on
You
into
know.
it, and I don't want to spoil it. Right, and I know, and I don't want to spoil that. I think it's I do think that they should have chosen one unfamiliar, more or less character, and one familiar character. Even the unfamiliar, we have to have some kind of familiarity with for the choice to be meaningful. It can't be a brand new character for the feeling that it wants to evoke. But Tita is interesting because we've seen her grow. We have seen a lot of her backstory, and we've seen how integral her character is in explaining certain technological things. And so by having her early on, we can go through her moon door, which we'll talk about in this episode, and see how technology is being developed and how all of that is being put into context with the wider conflict of things like Ouroboros. So I think for a narrative reason, Tita is really important to have in there. Also, gameplay-wise, having a long-range character. I mean, if we're thinking about party balance, in which we have 2 melee and 2 ranged characters, who else is left? Olivier? Tita. I think that's it. I think that's the only 2 ranged people that we know of so far. Josette. It could have been Josette.
Colin. I am not happy at all about the reference to Josette at one of the either a sun store or moon door, because that implies she would be a party member.
Yeah.
Though on the Twitch stream, someone said she is literally more useful out of your party and not in it, which makes me wonder, are there like passive, non-active party member buffs then?
Well, I'm the one who said that. So I suppose I should explain that, which is yes. At some point soon, there will be a system that opens up in which you can place a party member that's not in your active party into a support slot that offers specific bonuses.
So, once again, Josette is so useless as a game unit. She should be shelved.
Yeah, that's the joke, is that Falcom realized how useless she is and gave her a use to not be at the party. But we'll talk about that when we actually find her. I don't feel bad talking about that because the game really heavily implies that you're going to find her.
Yeah. And so back to Tita and Julia. So on the one hand, I do like how we've known the character of Julia a bit longer, and so she's not completely new. Because I think if we had, say, 3 completely new people like Reese is, 2 others like her, it would have been. Oh, I don't want to say chaotic, because that's essentially what it was for the first game. It was new person after new person after new person.
And
so
the next game will be the same way, right?
yeah, I don't know. I felt like Tita's story at this stage of her life is done. I don't want to say I'm not interested in her, but I feel like I know what there is to know about her. And if a couple years go by, when she's a late adolescent or a young adult, she has a new story, I want to see that. But now, well, what we saw, it felt like more of the same.
See, this I disagree with you pretty heavily on this, I have to say. Which is not to say that I don't agree that her arc had reached a type of ending with FC and SC. It did, in terms of her individual growth, finding purpose in life, finding the strength of character, creating this relationship with Agate, for instance. But what we also see in SC, if you see the optional cutscenes, which we didn't, but it's still kind of there, is this formation of a bond between Tita and Ren.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
in this moon door, that I guess we can jump into talking about that in a second, but we see that story is not done. That it is actively being pursued by Tita in the new actions that she's taking. So I don't see Tita's story as being done. I see Tita as starting a new one.
Okay, and I do like the questions, the very horrid questions Tita's mom asks her about weapons of war, about what if Ren does not take the hand you offer. But before we get into the details, let's do an overview of the moon door from beginning to end, then, shall we?
Sure. Well, first, I think we need to discuss what it is. Because essentially what happens is that we run around and there's this random door standing there. And you're called to it, and you open it, and it says basically you have to have Tita here with you to open the door. And so you do. You do.
Yes.
Tita walks in. There's a trial. There's like 3 enemies that Tita has to fight. It's difficult, but doable. You finish that fight, and your reward is story. Now, we should stress that there are 3 kinds of doors. There are moon doors, there are star doors, and there are some other kinds of doors that I forget. Star doors. No, I already said star doors. Sun doors, right. Moon doors are long. They are long-ass cutscenes. On stream, this cutscene lasted us like an hour and 20 minutes. Which was not what I expected. And I've played this before. Now, granted, you slow down, you talk to the chat and all of this, but it's very long. And the other moon doors are long like this, too. Star doors are also cutscenes, but are much shorter. And there are more of them. And then the final kind of doors are like mini-game-ish, but you'll see that when you find them.
So, it's a very long cutscene. Let's look at it from a narrative structure. And that means the action, maybe the tension and the pacing, they kind of screech to a halt to give us lots of unfiltered information. That, and this is important, this is not new to the character in question as of now.
Right.
Tita knew this.
This is all stuff happening in the past. It's not continuing the current narrative.
So that raises the question, who is this for? Is it for Tita? Is it meant to change her outlook within the game present? Because why this memory for Tita at this point in time? Or is it meant for the player? I mean, everything in a sense is meant for the player. We are interacting with the game. Is there an in-universe reason for why Tita, why this one, and why now? I don't know.
So the way that you find out, and I'm saying this because I didn't do this the first time I played, and I want to do this when I'm playing it now, is that when you head back to the hub, your party members, at least the ones that are not in your active party, are hanging out there, and they will talk to each other, and they will update with each chapter. So, one thing that we should do is come back to the Hermit's Garden when we have the chance, and talk to everybody and see how they're reflecting on their experiences. Does Tita talk about seeing this memory fragment? I don't know. My suspicion is that all of this shit is mostly for the player, and it's I don't want to say ham-fisted, but it's a diegetic way of just saying, hey, here's what happened. Let's focus in on this character.
Is it heavy-handed?
I mean, yes, but I don't. It's an interesting way of doing it because we're not playing this in a linear fashion, and that opens up the game to revealing so many different aspects. In a very real sense, they are not limited by temporal restrictions. They can go as far back as they want. They can go forward if they want to. They can also move around in geography.
And you can only do that with where we are, this sideways from reality in the game.
Precisely. I mean, yes, you can do it in ways of like characters talking to each other and, oh, here I'm reminiscing. You know, we saw this with Estelle talking about her mother or characters revealing their backstories, but it's not the same. It's not the same effect. And I think that this game is kind of interesting for doing it this way.
Yeah, there's time compression. It's implied almost no time or a very short amount of time, I think, lasted for Kevin and Reese outside.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Like, they were not waiting for, like, 90 minutes. Like, okay, kind of bored.
Yeah, but basically, I don't think any marker of time is given to us. What we know is that Tita went in there alone, and then she came out, and they knew that she was in there. But I don't think they said anything like, wow, that was short, or, man, we were waiting a long time.
But, so Tita goes in. The trial, I'm not sure there's much to write home about. It can be a bit tough because you only have Tita, and there's not that many fights in the game. You only have one person in any of the games, I mean.
Right. But it's doable. You do it. You know, I didn't die. I don't think you died.
So this introduces us to more of Tita's parents. More of her mother, who we saw in the prologue, and her father for the first time.
Yes. It's kind of funny, like, so the way that it opens up is Tita's just walking around Zeiss, and the mother and father come down, but you don't know who they are. And it's like playing that mysterious Ouroboros music of, oh, these are about to be enemies, and then they reveal themselves, and oh, it's all happy. Tita sees their parents, they're happy. Tita's mom gets into a fight with her grandpa, which apparently is just fun for them. I think the biggest takeaway that we had on stream looking at the interaction between this family is that the father is whipped. The father likes to be stood on by Erica, and he is all about it.
He is not the dominant personality in the relationship, which, looking aside how effing weird Erica Russell is, I do like the switch of the gender roles. He's the quiet, almost submissive personality. He's not the intellectual spark. He's basically a stay-at-home dad. He's more of the emotional anchor for Tita, and that's not something that we often see.
I don't know if we want to downplay his intelligence. He's still an engineer who's traveling around and doing all of the science stuff.
But the active forces for this project is Tita's mom and her grandfather.
Yeah, that's for sure true. No, he is overshadowed by the Russells.
And Tita's father is the one who's, say, cooking breakfast.
I just realized something, Kevin. Tita Russell. Erica Russell. Her father is Albert Russell. That means that Dan's last name was not taken by Erica. For all we know, Dan took Erica's last name.
He had to have.
Well, I don't know if we ever see him referred to as Dan Russell. But actually, no, you're right. He had to have. Well, I guess that would depend. Who gives the last name to the daughter? Would it be the father or the mother?
It's the mother, because isn't it Grandpa Russell?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that Dan might not have had to have taken Erica's last name, but certainly Erica didn't take Dan's. And nowadays this is more common, but certainly back when this game was published, I mean, the expectation was a woman takes the husband's name, period.
Estelle Bright. Cassius Bright. She took her name from her father.
Yep, that's true. But that would be because Leanna took on Cassius's name.
Oh yeah, I'm saying it's an interesting diversion, because it's not it does not seem to be the norm in universe to either take the mom's last name or the husband takes the wife's last name.
Correct.
That does not seem to be the universal. So I wonder what this says, if anything, here.
I mean, I don't know if it necessarily says anything about gender relations, but it does stress that Erica, for lack of a better term, wears the pants in this relationship.
And she's angry at Grandpa Russell again for letting Tita, for not exercising the supervision that she would like. And I think Grandpa Russell is not wrong when he says, I'm getting lectured by the mother who abandoned her daughter to go wander the continent. And that's not wrong, Colin.
Okay, so have you ever read Ibsen's play The Dollhouse?
I have not.
So I've read this a long time in high school, but basically it's about a woman who's emotionally abused by her husband, constantly being yelled at for spending too much money, not doing anything right, to the point where she hates her own life and finally gets the courage to just walk out and leave. Though this then opens the question, what kind of mother is she who just walks out and abandons her children to a man who she does not enjoy? And I feel like we're in a similar position here, in which Erica is not a good mother, and also Albert let his granddaughter fight in 2 wars. It's not like he's good either.
Oh, I was going to say, no one's abusive. I think Erica is a neglectful but good-intentioned mother who does not place Tita at the top of her list of priorities.
No, correct. I mean, I wasn't making a parallel between any abuse happening. It's simply that Erica Russell abandons her kid and does not seem to really have a crisis of a crisis of conscience about that.
No, they came back because they heard about what was going on with Ouroboros, and that raises the interesting question, at least for me. How widespread is knowledge of this supposedly secret society?
I think that knowledge of it was increased, especially amongst the principal players or the pivotal players, as it may be. Once all of this shit went down, it's not like Russell hid anything from his daughter and son-in-law. So that might be why she knows about it. The other thing that I wanted to point out, though, I feel really bad for Tita. Because Tita's kind of used to a certain amount of independence, not just through her actions fighting, but her grandfather had a pretty free hand. And then her mother comes back after what seems to be years of an absence and immediately starts telling her what to do.
She's 12.
Right. Which, like, under normal circumstances, yeah, she's 12. Although as a 12-year-old, still you have some kind of independence. You're not talked down to all that much. It depends on the family. But
you should not have this much.
This is really big. Freshman from college comes home for the first time and it hates it instantly because his parents or her parents forget that they are an adult now.
Tita is emphatically not an adult. As a 12-year-old, she should not have had this much autonomy and freedom of action.
But she did, though.
I think.
And then she's being ordered around by a parent who has not been there.
And I get that, but boundaries are a good thing for a child of this age.
I mean, boundaries might be good, but I don't think that Erica is really in a position in which she should be...
No.
I mean, allowed is too strong of a word, but if my parents came back after years of not seeing me and immediately started treating me like a 12-year-old, I would literally say, fuck you. I was a potty mouth at the age of 12, and I never really grew out of it. And I'm now 28, so I would definitely have said fuck you, because I did back then.
Grandpa Russell, though, as the parental figure, should have been, and should be now, setting these boundaries and limits.
Yes.
She is not a worker. She is not going into the mines alone. She should not have a cannon. That is not one of her...
But at the very least, Albert gave her the means to protect herself. You know, some self-reliance.
She has a weapon, and this moon door is about weapons and harm. Because it's about the design of what's called the Orbital Gear Project. And could you talk a bit about what that is?
Yeah, so essentially, we mentioned this a little bit when talking about SC, although it didn't come up that much, is that Ren has this weird thing, the Pater Mater, Latin and Greek for mother, father, which makes sense for her backstory, but essentially it's a big-ass robot that she can control through some means that is made for fighting, made for combat, in a way that you might conceive of if you're thinking about like Gundam or Xenogears. Though in this case we don't see Ren getting into it. Clearly that's what Erica Russell and everybody else is trying to create. They are trying to replicate the technology that underpins Pater Mater in order to increase the military's power level. Basically, there's a new level that a military has to be now that the Pater Mater has been made public, quote-unquote public, and now it's up for the Zeiss Central Factory to replicate and advance. And this has some pretty huge implications for the rest of the series, as anybody who's played Cold Steel knows.
Interesting. And it's not one of the things where causing harm or violence is an incidental or unanticipated result or outcome.
No, I mean, what she says basically is, we designed this stuff. We do not get to control how it is being used, but it is designed to hurt people. Yes, you can hurt people to protect other people, but it's still designed to hurt people.
And that raises the question of, the role of scientists with weapons of war, of causing harm to prevent further or greater or other types of harm. And these kind of weighty questions are given front and center attention. The game does not shy away from asking, essentially, Tita, this is what's going to happen. And if you do this, you're going to let a genie out that cannot be put back into the bottle. This will have unexpected reverberations, consequences. And are you okay with that?
Right. And she ultimately decides that she is, right? She wants to work on this project because she is hoping that by working on this project, it'll put her on an equal level with Estelle and with Ren so that she can continue this relationship that she had been forming with Ren.
She wants to get to Ren, to talk to her, not just to defeat her, put her down. She wants to open lines of communication with Ren. This allows her to do that and not be beat instantly by Pater Mater. And Tita, I think we have different views about Tita and her mindset. She does acknowledge Ren has done some pretty bad stuff. And Tita thinks and says this is not all of who she is. And I think the game, through Erica, has a really good question about this. How she wants to get to Ren to talk to her.
Yeah.
Get her to continue this moral awakening that Estelle began. And then she's asked by her mother, by Erica, okay, if you finally get to talk to this Ren girl again, and it turns out she doesn't see you as a friend, that doesn't want to go on this path you want her to go on, she asked her daughter, what will you do? And that, I think, is a really powerful question.
It's a really good question, but I think that Tita's answer, even if not stated, is equally powerful, which is, I am trying to equalize myself with Ren. That's why she's involved in this Orbital Gear project, because she knows that if this is, like, not only does she know that Ren will not respect her if she doesn't get to a certain level of equality, which will allow that conversation to happen in the first place, it also means that if Ren says no, she is able to fight against Ren on an equal playing field.
I mean, yeah, but my impression was she would continue to keep trying, because she said she still wants to be a part of Ren's life.
Sure, but this is anime, and sometimes that means beating the bejesus out of them in order to show them that you care.
And in the Docs call-in, I have snarky protagonist-centered morality, but I think it's a more apt to say essentially named versus unnamed suffering. Like, the people Ren hurts off-screen, they're not quote-unquote real to us. Not really. It's faceless numbers, stuff that was said to have happened. It's not as immediate and present as either one on screen or two to people that we know.
Okay, but I think that we also need to really be precise about what we're talking about here and what evidence we have here. So the only actual violence that we have seen Ren do is in two discrete times. One is in the Louvre Monogatari stuff, in which Ouroboros takes out a Jaeger camp thing, and Ren confirms that she has killed a lot of them. These are Jaegers, these are mercenaries, they're people of war. We in no way do we see Ren attacking civilians or anybody not involved. Same with the invasion of Grand Cell. Obviously, Ren is fighting against soldiers there. It's an invasion. We don't like this invasion. She's on the wrong side of it. But we don't see her attacking any civilians. We don't see her attacking any so-called innocents. And we also have no confirmation that any of those soldiers died. I don't think that they did. You are making a lot of assumptions that off-screen, Ren is just out there killing a crap ton of people. And there is no evidence for this.
Colin? I just want to say one thing that's snarky, but at the same time, 2,000% true. Not 1,000, 2,000. What is her title?
Her title is the Angel of Slaughter. You're absolutely right. And I'm saying she has killed before. But what I'm saying is, if you look at all of the evidence that we have, we do not get the impression of Ren acting as a homicidal maniac. We do see her be a bit deranged. She takes pleasure in killing, although with her interactions with Tita and Estelle, this appears to have softened. And you cannot point to anything after her conversation with Estelle that says Ren is still killing people. You have no evidence for this. So in this thing that you've written down here on the Google Doc, you say, but what about the nameless masses who Ren is/will hurt and even kill? And the fact is, in terms of will kill or hurt, we have no evidence for that. This is right after a conversion moment. And as for is hurting, I mean, well, A, that's part of what the conversion moment is meant to address. And B, all the information that we know of about the people who she has attacked are either evil, like the Jaegers, or at the very least, they are prepared to fight.
Let's talk about conversion. The conversion moment. Say Tina does convince Ren the error of her ways completely and then turns to be a force fighting for good. What bearing would this have on any culpability or need for punishment, or what say you about the things she did before that? But then also, I do understand how indoctrination, she's even younger than Joshua, brought up with this mindset. How responsible as a literal child soldier is she for her actions at the age of, what, 10?
Something like that. I want you to keep that question in mind as we play this game. I'm just telling you that right now. I'm not going more into it, but that is a very important question that you should remember. Now, in terms of punishment or culpability, I'm going to say something a bit of a hot take here that I know that you will disagree with, but I don't think that any punishment is necessary. Again, we're returning to the two types of violence that we have seen.
I get that.
One is, they're not innocent, the Jaegers. Jaegers can do some pretty awful shit. They seem to have been doing some awful shit from the little, like they're described as criminals in the manga. And then invading Grancel, I don't think that she killed anybody. She did hurt them. Okay, it's an anime. Get over it. She's part of this society that has a mission. We're hurting people all of the time.
Get that. And the fact that she was raised from the age of 6 or so through the age of about 10, 99.999% of cases, I would agree. But something about Ren, it just feels like she's reached the age of, I'm not sure what it's called, but that she is able to distinguish what society thinks of right and wrong, and she seems to relish choosing what she knows the prevailing moral code, to act in a way that it is thought of as evil. But then again, she's been raised by homicidal psychopaths, and so yeah, I do see that.
And also, like, setting aside the Grancel invasion, we haven't actually seen her do anything evil on screen. She keeps threatening to kill Estelle and Tina, but she never does.
What time should you rise beyond the environment in which you were raised? If she was 25, would this defense still apply?
No, I don't think that it would. I mean, maybe a little bit if she's raised in it, but at the same time, like, we do have an expectation that once you hit the age of maturity, the age of reason, as it were,
yes,
that you can come over that, but 10 is not the age of reason. 12 is not the age of reason.
Okay, so she has not reached the age of reason, of independent reason.
Well, at least in a modern-day Western conception. In anime times, you never know.
It's tough. I really do see these arguments, and I would agree, except that she seems to delight in her moniker. I do know.
Yes, that's true. That is true.
I'm not sure how much more we can say without going in circles.
Right. Now, I think we should move on to our last point, which is we get to the end of this whatever level that we're on, and we find a demon there. One of the 77 devils or something like that, I think is what Kevin calls him. He has a name, for one. Like, this is somebody that they find in the scriptures. Kevin recognizes who he is, and we fight him. We end up killing him. Let's just talk about the combat for a moment. That fight is hard. It is very difficult.
Yes! The demon is able to damage you and then restore that as health, one. And then two, at each corner, there's essentially, I would call them turrets, for lack of a better term.
Yep. They have basically line abilities where they have unlimited range, but they only go in one direction, and they can shoot fire at you. And what you have to do is move your characters out of the way so they don't get hit by it, while also doing damage to them in order to kill them. And that is where it gets a bit tricky, because you can't just keep running around. You have to take them out. But all the time, those guys are immune to physical damage, but they take magic damage. Whereas, at least in the first phase, the main boss is the opposite. We've seen this play around in SC a little bit, right? With the Luciola fight. Here it's better balanced. It's definitely better. Like, it felt like an actual fight that I had to strategize with, and I found that to be very engaging. But that's not the worst part of the fight. It's the most involved portion of the fight. But there's also, like, 2 other phases of the fight after that like, you think you're about to win, oh, the boss is still there. The first attempt that I had, I did not know that I could upgrade Julia and Tita's equipment, and so my physical attacks were basically doing nothing to the guy. I almost got him down, and then I forgot to heal on one turn, and then he just obliterated my party. The second time I had a bit of a better equipment, I had an idea of what the fight was, that I managed to take him down pretty easily. But this boss fight was kind of a wake-up call for having to use more strategy and stuff like that. And part of it's because I'm playing on hard, sure. But also I think that the boss fight was just better designed than a lot of the other fights that we've seen. Difficult, but interesting.
Difficult, but not frustrating. And that can be a difficult line to walk.
Indeed.
Nothing is worse than, say you die, or even if you win, you're like, man, fuck that. That was not fun.
There's a certain amount of pleasure that one gets in overcoming frustration. Like, I was frustrated when I died at the last possible moment. Like, victory was in sight. 1 or 2 more attacks, bam, I would have killed him. Instead, I die. So, like, there was a bit of like, oh my fucking god, are you kidding me? But then coming back, changing my course, changing my equipment, coming in with the knowledge, I felt like I overcame a challenge, and that felt really good.
Let's talk about the devil as besides the combat.
Yeah.
So, this seems to be a technical term, one of the 77 or so named in Scripture. So, raises the question, are we in hell? But this devil is not the big bad. He is a servant of the master of Phantasma, or maybe Phantasma's name of the realm we're in. And this master, or this person, evidently can control a being so evil he is named within the scriptures, and that suggests a huge power level.
Would you say that his power level is
fuck off
over 9,000?
I'm not going to go and dignify that with a response, Colin, but this is the first boss, the presumably weakest barrier, guardian, whatever, is a being that is named like in the scripture. That suggests a lot.
It's like if they just threw at you Legion from the New Testament and say, fight this for your first real boss fight. It kind of sets a tone, right? We're not fucking around.
No. This isn't a mundane coup. This isn't even wise men with this society. This looks to be on a different level entirely. More spiritual or something. Most of the game so far has been in a different dimension. Maybe the rules don't apply in some aspect.
Well, and something that's reinforcing that notion that we kind of skipped over and we have to talk about is that the higher elements are present the entire time. There is no point in which there are no higher elements except at the very beginning of the prologue when you're on the airship, which means that we have all these extra status effects that are present. Death Blow, Guard, Rush, status ailments, Vanish, which is a pain in the butt. I mean, they basically double the amount of things that you have to react to with the turn order, which, A, makes combat more engaging, but B, it also reinforces the feeling that you are not in Kansas anymore. This is a spiritual realm. And it'll be interesting to see how that concept is developed in the next couple of chapters.
When I want to say something else, Kevin, I think it smelled. It smelled the demon or smelled the taint. This is not his first time with diabolic or demonic auras or whatever. So that adds to the backstory of, age 22, but he has seen some bad shit.
Yeah, he's clearly experienced. He recognized the devil. He recognized the demon. Tina and Julia did not. So it's not even just that this is somebody named in the scriptures. It's you need intense study of the scriptures to remember this.
It's like
not just a passing knowledge.
Oh yeah, I've seen Azazel before, or Baphomet, or what say you?
Okay, hold on. Did you just tell me that you've seen the devil in real life?
No, it's the equivalent of like Kevin having this experience is like someone like a Templar or Inquisitor being like, yeah, I fought Azazel.
Well, I don't know if Kevin says that he's fought one before. I know he recognizes it. But also,
context, have to... Would you see a demon but not fight them, I wonder?
You could read about it in a book, like the scriptures. We also have to wonder, so in the scriptures that we have, the Christian scriptures, you have your figures like your Bahamut or your Beelzebub or what say you?
What
said what?
Christian scriptures that we have?
You're right. I'm sorry, but most of this is drawn from the Old Testament anyway, so we do share that. My apologies for my rhetorical imperialism all over your religious identity. But these are basically synonyms for the devil, or they're major demons, but there are minor demons as well, just like there are major and minor angels that you see in, say, like the Deuterocanon / Apocrypha, or however you want to describe them. So one has to wonder, is one of these 77 demons like a minor one? Probably.
Minor is also relative. I get the impression that, say, if this demon, say, appeared in Cransel, that would be a huge emergency of, can we stop him?
Well, yeah. If a demon popped over Washington, D.C., you'd best bet that the army would be nuking it, or at the very least, with all of these UFOs that we've been shooting down, at least throwing out some missiles. Maybe we'll try to get it over some water first.
Yeah, and so, but again, Phantasma, the master of Phantasma, is the controller of this demon. And that implies a lot.
It does. And we'll have to see how it develops. All we really have now is speculation. One last bit is just that we should be precise. The demon was not called the servant of the master of Phantasma. The guy who was called the servant of the master of Phantasma was the same long-haired silver dude that we had seen before. And he appears now. Do you have any predictions as to who this individual is?
Okay, so this guy that we've seen is not the ultimate controlling force. He is a servant. But he's still
he calls himself the servant of the master of Phantasma.
Was this guy controlling the demon?
I don't think it says. He's there when the demon is defeated, but I don't know if he says I summoned the demon or anything like that.
Okay, but it's clear there's someone who we've not yet met who is maybe responsible or whatever. But we're not anywhere near close.
And also, it doesn't look like this guy is on our side, as it were.
No. And I suspect he'll be a mid-game boss or something.
Sure. Fair enough. All right, Kevin, before we close out, do you have any last-minute predictions or speculations about how things will turn out in Chapter 2?
What kind of party members will we get next? Who or if will be the next completely new party member? Someone like these who we've never met before. I can't say, who is this person I've never met? What will they be like? One, but I bet we're going to see more of that. Two, will there be other members like Julia, people who we have not played essentially before, but we've known, like maybe Cassius or something? I bet so, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. maybe Kanone, because she and Julia had some weird personal tiff with their time in school, I think. So maybe that is explored in more detail, and that would also allow us to get to know both. It would make them more 3D people. So yeah, I bet Kanone at some point.
Okay.
And I'm going to update the list of predictions.
Sounds good. Why don't you take us out?
I'm Kevin. That's Colin. See you next time.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.